The strangest sequel, Valkyrie Profile 2, Silmeria by KBash. We watched the video about the first game. Now we're watching the video about the second game. This one's 3D already. Dylan. Anyways, we'll look at that.
Oh, this man's popping off. This man.
What the fuck? Is he rotating? We're like stuck.
Moving. Holy shit! The wind blows, the grass shivers, and the shadow known only as KBash materializes once again. Valkyrie Profile 2 draws near.
Interesting, okay.
I took a look back at Valkyrie Profile the first recently, and you know, that game's really cool, and I was excited to play the sequel, released.
Yeah, that definitely looked very interesting, for sure. And I looked it up, right? I looked through like my old games collection, and I do in fact own the first one for the PSP.
By the same team, not the same lead dev, nearly 7 years later for the PS2. That's a hell of a jump, a whole console generation, and basically the amount of time it takes Link to drop a whole tier delineation. Wait, what were we talking about? And Valkyrie Profile 2 has a lot going on. It's something jerkingly beautiful. It's got a real-time combat system, and it fills in notable lore holes by acting as a prequel to the first. It's needlessly complex. It was dogged by reviewers for high difficulty and obfuscated system stuff. Okay, I am absolutely dripping with anticipation. I'm gonna do it! I'm finally gonna play Valkyrie Profile 2! What the hell did I just play? Valkyrie Profile 2 starts in...
Interesting. Okay. Again, it looks already very pretty. We can say that. It looks very pretty. Though the one area did remind me of Prince of Persia, Warrior Within, and that scared me. Very much.
A small port city with the protagonist Alicia having an apparent schizophrenia episode in public. In reality, the soul of...
Yeah, that's just the relationship me and Chad have. Chad does actually not exist. It's just me being schizophrenic. It's fine.
Silmeria Valkyrie is currently inhabiting Alicia's body because there are 3 Valkyrie personalities and only one can be active at any given time in the designated Valkyrie body. And it ain't Silmeria. And yes, this is all really high concept if you didn't play the first game, but whatever, it's 2 girls, 1 body. Most intuitively...
This sounds... Well, that's classic, right? Pyra and Mithra, right? Only one can be active at a time unless until the end. That also sounds like a Korn movie. 2 girls, 1 body.
Yes, thing I've ever heard. Though the game makes use of 3D rendering, moving away from sprites and getting with the times, you're still only allowed to move through cities 2D side-scroller style. I think it's cute. Nice little stylistic callback without having to break the bank, and trust me, the game's content is elsewhere. The cities are glorious, sun-dappled pit stops, and not a whole lot more. Listen here, you little shit. The story picks up when you recruit a very strange man to help ferry you to Alicia's home, Japan. I love this scene. Silmeria says, talk to him. Alicia says, who? And we get,
who else could I be talking about? That guy right there.
Literally though, it's a bar full of like, farmers, bakers.
It's a bar full of guys, and you talk to a man. Yeah. Which man? That's a man, that's a man, that's a man. I'm 50-50 on this one. That's a man and that's a man. What do you mean?
And green-haired Legolas. Who the fuck was you thinking, Alicia? Was it Farmer Benjamin you were confused about? What a cousin Jeb though? You'll move along, recruit some characters. Silmeria takes control of Alicia every now and then to summon Einherjar and grease the plot. The early party is pretty tense and untrusting. It's some really fertile ground for a found family type game, but a few things are, frankly, weird. If you played the original or watched anything on it, you'll know it's a real hourglass kinda experience. You're on the clock from the outset, and I really enjoyed that more focused ride because while it seems daunting, the actual time economy is forgiving if you're concentrated on finishing the game, handing out plenty of periods for grinding and never really asking too much of the player. It truly is that high-class meal that shits out good, you feel? The sequel, conversely, well, VP2 sits in your stomach undigested for a long time. There's no no time constraint. You're free to handle things at your own pace.
Okay, so they removed the time thingy completely in comparison to the first one. Not that it really mattered that much, the time part, right? Because if I remember correctly, you do have all the time in the world. You have enough time, right? It's not like Majora's Mask where like you don't pay attention, the moon's coming.
Fortunately, it's a much longer game as well. While the story is linear, progression isn't, requiring the player to grind out levels, grind out ability points, leave the main path for side quests and optional areas to stay competitive with the main path. It's actually fairly frustrating. Like, not on its own, but coming off the first. That game felt like a true forgotten gem. VP2 feels like fishing up some kind of bootleg Moby Dick. Extremely strenuous and nobody cares. Still, the game's got plenty on offer, so let's do some appraisal. I'm handing out my very first KBash gold seal of approval for aesthetics. This shit whips. This is incredible. I kneel for well-executed low fantasy.
Again, I'm not surprised. It looks beautiful. It definitely does look beautiful. But I'm gonna be honest, you know why it looks beautiful? And nobody really mentions this, and no game really uses them nowadays, right? Which is pre-rendered backgrounds. I am pretty sure that this game also uses pre-rendered backgrounds, which means that everything that is in the foreground already has a chance to be more beautiful because the background doesn't need any assets, right? Modern games don't do that, right? They don't use pre-rendered backgrounds anymore.
Austere, mildly ethereal landscapes, cities and towns. Look at that snowfield. Look at that regular field. I can literally feel the wind. Look at this place. I'm sorry, town's called Coriander, and it's literally where I want to retire? You know when you feel a deep sense of longing and it's like a low-grade stomach ache? You ever basked in the pale moonlight set amidst cold stone and deep greenery? I'm begging VP2, open the portal. I need this. Let me in! VP2 likely took the 3D approach in response to the changing gaming market, and while it's sad to lose sprited assets, that low-grade, high-craft charm, this is how to shift gears. And let's not forget the music. That's right, Motoe Sakuraba's back
A classic. A classic, of course. He's always around. Bro is like in any JRPG around like the before at least the PlayStation 3 era. And even then, right? Eternal Sonata, that man is just there as well. He's just everywhere. Button Kaito's. He's just there. He's just there.
Once again, I think I've name-dropped him maybe 5 times this year. Man's a legend, and he's there, personally panpiping for you in the background while you wander through the fields and plumb the depths of dungeons.
You can never escape.
But that's the aesthetics. Not everyone cares over much about presentation or music. Thief 1 is a game, and it's pretty fun. So how's the play? I guess what blows me away about VP2 is general reception from fans. A lot of people love this game to death, even though it's nothing really at all like the first. And in a lot of weirdly anti-player ways, maybe some people thought the
moves an inch. Doom. Moves an inch. Enemy casts Doom. You just get obliterated. That is crazy. Yeah, that was a crazy thing. Crazy animation.
Episodic delivery of hastily wrapped character backstories was tacky or unfulfilling. I guess that's possible, but just like how the game is cropped short because you're headed to war at the end of the world, Valkyrie Profile crops its cutscene time to show lives swept up in the pernicious reality of mortal life. It works with its themes and context. Valkyrie Profile 2 is much more lush. It contains multitudes. It feels more complete. Not a Spartan race to the finish, but a measured and sometimes meandering waltz through the countryside. You'll wander through major dungeons, as one does, triggering the occasional cut.
Oh, you still do the regular thing, right? Doom? Yeah, that one. Wait, do you know? Wait. Are we thinking of the same thing here? That animation? Or that moment?
Cutscene, completing the occasional puzzle, they seem innocent. Crystal magic is different this time around. Yes, you can freeze anyone you come across, but now you can swap places with them by firing another blast, opening up all kinds of platforming nonsense. Unfortunately, this comes at the cost of wall climbing and other tricks, so it feels more like a side grade. Really helpful for speeding through areas once you know what you're doing, though.
Yeah, teleport Schmaster.
The low-key evil threading the walls comes in orb format. Basically, you'll pick up stones throughout the dungeons, some of them loose and some of them set in pedestals, and you'll more or less install stones in these veins, these daises, to grant passive buffs or debuffs to both you and your enemies in combat. It's a lot to explain, but the gist is you end up running around a little longer than necessary in any given.
I've noticed that when she walks around, she looks a little awkward. I've seen that. Doomed. Yeah, it's that one from All Alive. Kiara. And Fireball. Freeze. Doom.
Dungeon to craft a good set of conditions to fight bosses under. You might be thinking, evil? Strong choice of word, bud, but I'm telling you, with VP2, the key commodity is time. Everything is time. A lot of stone transferal requires points, which are doled out in sparse quantities after combat, so sometimes you just get caught grinding. Shoot, even being made to backtrack frequently gets annoying. The game's about 50 hours, and half of that is busy work, and
50 hours. Well, it is a JRPG of all times, so that does not surprise me, but 50 hours that's rough.
And here you are. Okay, the original game let you recruit warriors by watching them die sad, cruel deaths in a careless world. Okay, trade offer. I receive your tears, you receive a character. Very antagonistic relationship, but hey, it fleshed out the world and made every character matter. And since each one was unique with different animations and all that, they felt genuinely important and interesting, like deluxe character pickups. Not just dudes you sent up to Valhalla for war, but a pool of talent you could pull from to form the ultimate fighting force. In Valkyrie Profile 2, you find glowing weapons on the ground and suck the latent soul out of them or something, and then you've got a new party member. No cutscene or anything. No backstory except via text in a sub-menu. Same animations across the board, and mostly swapped palettes.
They are baddies, though. They are baddies, though. They are baddies.
And then you've got a new party member. No cutscene or anything. No backstory except via text in a sub-menu. Same animations across the board.
Like that one?
Sub-menu. Same animations.
That's a baddie. My party would consist all of women. The usual thing. I will play as a violent misandrist in any game that I ever play. If I can run only women, I will run only women.
Across the board, and mostly swapped palettes. There's something like 40 in the game. Holy f***, dude. I don't get it. Like, say I'm an Einherjar, right? You pull my axe out of the ground so you can put me in your party, and you get a text pop-up that says, KBash lived from 1912 to 3072 and died of Penis-Hort disease. And
I like the short hair one. Valkyrie Profile 2 is the name.
that's that. Admittedly, you can't get them all in a single run. Certain weapons will have multiple potential Einherjar inside of them, but only give out one from the pool at random. So yes, there's some level of personal pride you can get out of being gifted your squad via fate or something. It just doesn't even approach what the first game did.
Question though, do I lose them? Do I lose them? Do I lose them? That's an important question. If I don't lose them, yes.
And I get it. I guarantee you there was zero budget or dev time left for fleshing out a whole new cast of dudes, especially when they didn't create tons of original assets for the different Einherjar. Still a downgrade though. I mean, with the number of main party members in your squad at any given time, you're barely incentivized to use the Einherjar, except to farm their souls for mechanical benefit. What the fuck? Combat's where the game really shines. The old setup was fine. It functioned. It was fun to set up combos with your main squad once you knew how they worked together. But once you had it down, that was it, really. VP2's system is blown wide open. You can still choose to engage or ignore combat at will, but once the game's on, your options expand tenfold. I called it real-time, but that's somewhat misleading. Basically, your party and your opponents spawn into 3D space. You can move at will, but if you do, your opponents will move as well. You can dash around, and that ends up being super important because the goal is to move in range and pummel enemies to death while minimizing incoming damage. It's how you break the effective movement economy of the game. It's hard to actively avoid enemy attacks without dashing around because enemies are always moving forward, and they have these huge threatened spaces they show with MMO-like indicators. Stand in one and get whacked. Those are some hefty ranges, bro. I see you're training for Sam Show.
It just had an entire red line. Once you stand there, jeez.
Nice! So the goal becomes zipping through red spaces and behind enemies to initiate attacks. After you've started the beatdown, it's really not much different than before, only attacks are more likely to connect on average than the first game. Not always, but they cleaned up most of the hitbox jank. You've got most of the same options. Mages can cast spells from a menu, you can make use of items. If you want to get
A mage is still broken as shit.
tactical, you can split the party. Try not to leave your ass exposed, i.e. the one party member who can't get with the program and always trails just far enough behind to get smacked, and you'll be fine. And the basic goal hasn't changed. You're still a 4-person party with each member affixed to a button. You can customize your setup to maximize the number of hits you pull to fill up the gauge to drop a fat special attack on the enemy.
Now's the time. Finishing strike. Viva Langalesti!
Damn, that's hardcore, bro!
Damn! That thing's dead! Crazy. Okay, the super attacks, whatever special attacks you want to call them, still peak. Also, from the sound tech, I can definitely tell that this is Sakuraba. I hear that. I can hear this men's soundtrack immediately. I know immediately that it is him. 100%.
In a game that's lacking some of the original's charm, it's nice to see ridiculous, over-the-top, named special attacks. I have my own special move, too. Seventh sealed sword art, behold, thousand Zentetsuken severing the 1,000 threads of fate!
Destroy!
So the game's fun and frantic. The only real issue is how
Cat sacrificed. Anyways.
much combat you actually do. I frequently, more than frequently, I constantly went out to grind between story dungeons because I genuinely felt like I had no choice. Even if bosses aren't out of your level range, equipment and abilities really carry the difficulty, and a lot of good equipment is crafted specifically by grinding up a bunch of base materials from enemies to hand over to a merchant in a needlessly strange menu system, but ignore that, so you're rewarded for screwing around and faffing about, killing everything, laying waste to the monsters. I'm sure someone below is writing up a complaint on how you can abuse mechanics to scrape by with minimal grinding, and I gotta tell you, the good news is there's more than one avenue for grinding up power, either via sealstone setups, or good equipment, or abilities, or actually bothering to become a tactical master, but it's not the kind of game I'd sell to most people. You know, you can pick up Persona or Xenoblade, and for the most part, they work out of the box. The game's fishing for that type of fan, though.
Unless you come to this 5 fucking lizards threatening the high end to you, and they absolutely whoop your ass even with solid equipment because they seal your arts, and then you can't heal yourself, and they absolutely cook you and violate you. Fuck these fucking Chromar lizards. I want to shove their swords up there and clubs up their ass.
Someone who will play for long hours and get invested. And we know that because they gate Einherjar acquisition with chance, completionists absolutely shaking, because the game allows you to start a New Game Plus and keep your recruits, and allows you to power up to obscene levels and stomp all over the game if you think it's fun. Anyone else, your mileage may vary. Play co-op with your crush, I can think of worse date nights. On that note, one of the things I actually didn't super love about the original was losing Einherjar. You always had to send up at least one, and sometimes two, if you wanted the normal ending. It's not truly painful. You've always got extras, and it adds extra tension or drama chapter by chapter. Here, you can set Einherjar free for items and experience orbs, and that's about it. No character updates on the war in Valhalla.
Absolute cinema. I will run an entire team of women. I will run in. Damn, that came from his soul. It is true, though. I will run an entire team of women. I will play if I would ever play this, I would play as a violent misandrist.
Nothing but the items to remember them by. It's a system whose shell is intact, but stripped of paint entirely.
Why do we have...
Shell is intact,
Wasn't there Adonis?
but stripped
Adonis.
of paint entirely.
Adonis. Behind me. Adonis. Bro is Chad. Adonis. doesn't that remind me of a specific creator who always said Adonis, and then like Adonis does this and that. I forgot who it was.
I really have to stress that VP1 is weird and interesting. 2, whether due to dev constraints or even narrative changes, isn't able to embody the totality of what its predecessor was. I caught a few apoplectic takes on Valkyrie Elysium comparing it to 2, but even 2 doesn't really burn like the original. The last major gameplay change is skills. In the past, you'd enter a submenu and plug points into skills for your dudes. Simple once you got the gist. In 2, I'm saying a lot of into today. In number 2, you wear equipment and try to match up the associated runes by color and shape that each piece of equipment brings to the grid to unlock passive skills that must be trained via combat to actually unlock, like FFTA or something. And you've got a limited set of skill points, so it's hard to get properly set up until the late game. A lot of reviewers at the time found this stuff needlessly arcane because it is. Like, on one hand, sure, I'm digging around in the character's skill mines and finding trash or treasure, but it's fine. I'm planning to spend 70 hours here. On the other, you have no real way of knowing how to get good skills, and most aren't incredibly clear about their purpose or value. Skill acquisition is annoying.
Holy Light almost gets obliterated. What is this damage, by the way? This health bar is always at the verge of dying. Holy Light gets zapped.
And time-intensive instead of instant and deliberate. I guess you could spin it as exploratory and engaging, like excavation or something. Nuance! I should mention bosses before moving on. The real tests of skill are always going to be the boss enemies, yeah? And like you'd expect, a lot of them are tightly designed, require specific in-combat actions to defeat, or gate players via specific means. One boss makes you run around the arena, breaking statues to open them up to damage. One boss does enormous attacks and asks the player to hug ass the whole fight or risk getting whomped. One fight will just straight up kill your party 100-0 unless you did your seal stone setup right or equipped fire resistance gear. A lot of the fights are annoying like that, but you have to give them props, I guess. Anything less, and it'd be a game of rolling in with your favored setup and unloading with no thought or effort or planning. FFTA again. I just wish games like this that make use of annoying gimmicks to gate progression at least cued players in beforehand. Like had some means of gathering information prior. Just like in D&D, VP2, walk in unprepared, expect to die. But in D&D, at least, you can usually scout or fact find a little. So in case it wasn't obvious, VP2 gave me some crazy sequel shock after a few hours. It's truly weird to play something as tight and considered as Valkyrie profile, then watch its sequel balloon out after pounding 300 cheesecakes. What is this game? Believe it or not, in a way, I think it's a smart direction to go, even if the actual product diverges radically from the origin point. Even if I'm not having fun. Smart because all of these things pad the play out. I've talked about this before, but it effectively creates an invested core fanbase. The amount of game here is monumental, especially factoring in endgame stuff and ideal build potential.
Well, you always also need to look at it like this, right? Sometimes you have no other choice but to diverge from the thing that you actually originally created, because with the time the player demands change. I don't feel like this game is bad in any way, shape, or form. It's just not what the first one was. But that's about it.
Valkyrie profile was always a weaselly number.
Right, like the boss fights are still kind of the same. Right, they're still annoying, gimmicky kind of things. Right, the traversal in the dungeon is also still the same, like freezing stuff as I've seen earlier, and teleporting from one place to another.
Nerd game, it's begging to be broken, and VP2 lets you go feral with it. And hey, there was no way VP2 was gonna be VP1 again, in a time where, if you can remember it, people looked down on sprited games as a generation behind the times. Expanding the IP would probably only be good. So, Triace said enough with the character vignettes and moments, it's time to make a recognizable JRPG. A linear, low variance, specifically Valkyrie profile story. All the fans are waiting to hear Brahms and Lazard's deal, so Recap time. The Valkyrie Silmeria inhabits Princess Alicia's body. Chris tries to stop them but fails and vows to hunt them down. Tension established. Alicia recruits a guide with Silmeria's help, and Silmeria summons Dylan the Einherjar later on, establishing most of the party. Dylan is ancient and self-serious, a fervid servant of Alicia's kingdom and Silmeria. Rufus is distrustful and discerns Silmeria's identity, but ultimately chooses to assist because she doesn't serve the gods. The party finds out that Alicia's father, the King of Japan, is up to some funny basement antics with his
What the fuck? Bro out here just trying to be the Warhammer Emperor and be put in some kind of machine to be paternally preserved.
court mages, and while escaping are stopped by Hrist, who turns out to be weaker than Rufus and Dylan combined, I guess, and when they're eventually surrounded, Lazard Valeth himself, the young apprentice to the mages and morbid from the first game, teleports the party away. The game turns into a hunt for the Dragon Orb, one of the extremely important MacGuffins from the first game, to thwart the king's occult villainy. This involves hunting for the thing and meeting up with Guts, Arngrim himself, and another mercenary named Leone. I like that the game gives away her identity immediately with these ridiculously overplayed staring shots. The story ultimately runs into the Vagrant story
Isn't that fucking Freya again? Jeez, doesn't matter. You will be added into the all-woman squad.
problem. That is, having interesting scenes, though much fewer in VP2's case, sprinkled between long segments of boring gameplay. The good news is, they went nuts with some of these. They're long and protracted enough that characters get all kinds of decent scenes together. It really feels like the game's gunning for just as good as Final Fantasy, guys, and only really falls short in the character category. Like Alicia, Rufus, Dylan, Lazard, I don't know, at least one of these is supposed to be a charisma factory, but they don't feel particularly lovable, you know? Lazard actually ends up being the most lovable the most often, as disgusting as that is, because he's constantly reassuring the party and acting level-headed in the face of danger, always providing a hopeful answer. If anything, the party's—
Of course, it's the mage. It's always the mage. In Dragon Quest, it's also the mage.
all tension. What's going to happen with Alicia and Silmeria? Who's Dylan supposed to be? Like, why is this ancient knight being given screen time alongside, like, Arngrim and others? What's Rufus's deal? Will Hrist smother Alicia in the night? When's Lazard going evil? That's a big one. Coming off the first game, we know Lazard's capable of murder and general sociopathy. I care more about the cast's origins and issues than about their interactions. We get another tense scene where it's revealed that Rufus is a half-elf, and therefore a vessel for Odin, so Odin could technically take his body anytime if he wanted. Adds a little anti-deity spice to the proceedings, a little
Doesn't matter. The government has officially announced that every man will receive an elf wife. Sorry women, you're cooked. You're not getting an elf husband or wife. It's only for the men.
Doom. We like the Doom. A lot of interpersonal bits between Leone and Alicia dot the middle section, some of them being pretty warm. Decent stuff, accepting the fact that the game frequently shows Lazard watching Leone, and even spoiling early that she's for sure a Valkyrie, being able to communicate with the dead. So, thanks for leaving me absolutely nothing to speculate about. Leone betrays the party once they find the orb, mortally wounds Arngrim, and takes him as an Einherjar by force. Guys, y'all really said, yo, fuck Guts. You get Dylan. Do I look like I'm trying to team up to fight the gods with a man named Dylan? From here, the game ramps up the stakes. Odin's going to war with Japan for being anti-god and pro-undead, I guess. The party rolls up looking for trouble. Damn! Nice catch! Unfortunately, Alicia watches her dad get the sloppy choppy
Damn! Well, he doesn't have a very strong head game, it seems. Or neck game.
via the guillotine, and while I'm a guillotine enthusiast myself, this act, in fact, serves to reinforce the status quo between humans and gods, so it does not qualify as praxis. This all culminates in a
Right into the basket, or the trash can in this case?
big scene where the Valkyries clash. The undead mage trio skirt around the battle, setting something up, and Lazard casually observes, so you know something's gonna happen. So during the catfight, the mages try to use a special spell to separate the souls of the Valkyries from their vessels, which is bad. Then Dylan reveals that he isn't Dylan, but actually the Lord of the Undead, Brahms, and says it's his turn to save Alicia. Then Freya The goddess Freya warps into position to assassinate Brahms because he's a high-value Odin enemy, at which point Lazard casts his own spell and mucks literally everything up. Brahms is captured by Freya, Odin wants to let Midgard perish, Alicia and Rufus are left alone, morale hits rock bottom. What was any of that, and what do we do now? Basically, Rufus and Alicia become best BBs and uwu quash friends and screw around the forest. Backtracking more than necessary, I might add, and doing a lot of PDA stuff, but thankfully they're alone for most of it. Alicia takes ghoul powder and doesn't end up like VP1 Yolanda. Figure that out.
Was that chick just eaten by essentially foreskin? Crazy work.
Yggdrasil, they confront Odin, get whomped, Lazard shows up, oops, he stole Silmeria's soul, so he's Mega Lazard actually. Then he whomps Odin and Freya, transfers Odin's soul into Rufus by force, displacing Rufus's soul, takes the Divine Spear Gungnir for himself, Freya escapes, Lazard's the new villain, Alicia... I'm overheating here, bro. Alicia manages to materialize Rufus the same as an Einherjar using his ring as a focus. The face when your boyfriend's a ring. Stop touching yourselves. I know at least 2 of you are into that. I do like that the party ends up fighting Freya because she's a
Holding hands? Lewd. No touching before marriage.
bigot, just won't negotiate with humans or something, so Hris steps up and isn't pure lawful evil for a second. Like, actually thinks for herself for once. Good. Then Lennith, creator goddess from the first game, appears before the party, having traveled beyond time and space to right the wrongs of the past. She reveals that Lazard didn't even come from this time, but her own time via a time machine. So this got really crazy, huh? I have to give this some props. Like, it goes off the rails pretty hard, shoots past the scope you'd expect, but it's got all these really beautifully rendered cutscenes and starts roping in familiar elements for fans. It's really trying to be a foundational, celebratory work for the series. I mean, you're loaded up with Arngrim, Brahms, Hrist, Lennith, eventually Silmeria again. You squat up, Alicia sacrifices herself to birth a super Valkyrie born of their combined souls, and Giga Creep Lazard gets stuffed by the 30-foot slants. Was the story any good? It's hard to say, but let's go piece by piece. The characters are okay. I can see liking them.
That was extremely chaotic. That was extremely chaotic. Who's writing this? Who's writing this? That's crazy.
Even more when you're younger. Alicia's cute. Rufus is kind of funny. Lazard's not awful for most of the game. They're fine. Some of the scenes are sweet, especially playing up Alicia's burden as a mortal forced to carry the weight of a godly being. Alicia's outcast status helps her bond with Rufus in a meaningful way, and even makes Lazard's presence sensical. The game's context is interesting. Lazard may be a villain, but he can play the hero temporarily in a party actively working against the gods for sympathetic reasons. Otherwise, the thing gets a little heavy with nouns and premises. Like, every inexplicable event has an explanation, it feels like, but that explanation was conjured on the spot. It's pretty common with metaphysical phenomena in fiction, so we simply nod and say, okay. Arguably, it could have hit a little harder with the versus God thing going on, if the party weren't already half superhuman and eventually all the Valkyries and the Lord of the Undead as well. I don't feel the outcast thing works as well when you're all the collected other superpowers, you know? So it works best as a togetherness story, fighting for each other at the end of the world. There had to be loads of people saying VP2 is good, but it isn't a good Valkyrie profile game on release. And while I feel it, I really, really do. I'm not gonna dog the thing for being different. I got my Valkyrie profile, and I can play it whenever. While some stuff is disappointing, it feels like a series of necessary development sacrifices, the result of pushing for a different, highly produced vision. 2 is deeply ambitious, very cool, heartbreakingly beautiful, and appropriately quaint, and sweet in its storytelling. It's not about the failures of mankind in the face of stagnation and extinction.
The game does look really beautiful. It does look really beautiful. They did, once again, a good job with how it looks. But I feel like that's a theme for all these older RPGs, JRPGs in all the games. Very much.
But rather about fighting for yourself and others for a future you can believe in, casting off the shackles of oppressors. It's an old song, but if it keeps getting sung, it must be worth the time. Hey, it's KBash. Huge thanks goes out to my
Anyways, well, that was a violent bit of game. That was a lot of game, I must admit. This seems very interesting. If I could run it, I would. That looks very interesting. That looks like my type of game for once. The first one, I don't like sacrificing characters. But the second one, I don't have to sacrifice characters. I can run a full team of women and be a violent misandrist. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. The gooner in me. Anyways, interesting. Like, comment, and subscribe.